This is Unit 2, Level 2, Rounding Decimal Numbers. So we round decimal numbers. Rounding is really used when we want to get an approximate answer. It doesn't have to be exact. We want an approximate answer when we need some numbers that are a little bit easier to work with. For example, I went to the store. I spent $19.95, so I spent approximately $20. I rounded it there. The rules to round are the same no matter if you're dealing with whole numbers or decimal numbers. But in this case, we're going to deal with some decimals. So I have the rules listed here. The first one is underline the digit you are rounding to. So for example, if I give you this number, 1 and 456 thousandths. And I tell you, I want you to round it to the nearest hundredth. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to underline the digit you are rounding to. So I'm going to find the hundredths place. We know from previous lessons that the hundredths place is that second decimal place. So we're going to go ahead and underline that second decimal place. The next one says, look to the place to the right of your underline. He's kind of like the buddy here. We're going to look to see what he's doing. If that is 4 or less, we're not going to mess. We're going to leave that underlined digit the same. But here, it's a 6. 6 is greater than 5. So 5 or more, raise the score. That means that 6 is going to make that 5 go up by 1. The third step here is every number before the underlined number stays the same. So anything going to the left is going to stay the same. So 1 will stay the same, the decimal point will stay the same, and the 4 will stay the same. Every number after the underlined digit goes to zeros. So 1 and 456 thousandths rounds to the nearest hundredth and becomes 1 and 460 thousandths, or 1 and, you can take that zero off, 1 and 46 hundredths. Let's look at another example. I have the number 2 and 95 thousandths, and I want you to round it to the nearest hundredth. Again, the hundredth is that second decimal place. So I'm going to go ahead and underline that second decimal place, just as it tells me in the first step. The second step again says look to the number to the right. If that's 4 or less, we're not going to mess. That number's going to stay the same. If it's 5 or more, we're going to raise the score. So I look and I see that it's a 5. That 5 is going to make that 9 go up by 1. But, if it goes up by 1, it becomes 10. And I can't put 2 digits in one spot. So what should I do? Well, just like we do when we add and we carry over, or when we multiply and we have to carry over to the next column or regroup to the next column, we're going to do that here. That 5 is going to make that 9 go up 1 and become a 10. So what that's going to look like is we're going to put our 0 and we're going to carry that 1 over to the next place value. So in this case, the tenths, and we're going to put that 1 there. Everything before it to the left is going to stay the same. Everything after it can turn to zeros or can go away. So 2 and 95 thousandths actually rounds to 2 and 100 thousandths, or we can take off those zeros and it becomes 2 and 1/10. Let's do another example. What if I have 4 and 62 hundredths and I ask you to round it to the nearest tenth? Again, underline the digit that you're rounding to. I'm rounding to the tenths, that's the first digit. As always, look to the place to the right. 4 or less, don't mess. 5 or more, raise the score. Well, a 2 is less than 4, so that means that 6 is going to stay the same. Everything in front to the left is going to stay the same as well, and everything after it's going to become zeros. So 4 and 62 hundredths rounded to the nearest tenth is 4 and 60 hundredths, or 4 and 6 tenths. One last example and one last thing that you'll run into is sometimes they'll say round to the nearest whole number. By whole number, what they really mean is round to the nearest ones place. So we look at ones. The ones are that first decimal right before first place, right before the decimal. And in this case, there's a 4 there, so I'm going to underline that 4. Just as always, in the rules, we always look to the place to the right. So we are going to look at that decimal place in the tenths to see what we do with that ones place. That 6 is 5 or more, so we're going to raise that score, and that 4 is going to become a 5. Just as before, anything before it stays the same, and anything after it becomes zeros. So 14 and 67 hundredths, rounded to the nearest whole number, which again is the same as saying round to the nearest ones, is 15. This is Unit 2, lesson on rounding decimal numbers.